Hello BookTube, I'm Vanessa, and today I want to talk about Sherwood by Meagan Spooner. I just finished this book and I loved it so much and I'm so excited to talk about it. I thought that we would start out this video with a spoiler-free review for anyone who might be interested in reading this book, just to hear, what my general thoughts on it were. And then after that, the people who have already read this book, or the people who don't care about spoilers, I guess, can stick around if you want to have a little chit chat about like some of my favorite parts and some more in-depth stuff that I just want to chit chat about. So let's go ahead and get started on a brief spoiler-free review of Sherwood by Meagan Spooner. Sherwood is a gender-bent Robin Hood retelling by Meagan Spooner, who is the author of Hunted, which was a Beauty and the Beast retelling that I really loved, so I was really excited to check out another retelling from her. And the premise of this retelling is basically that instead of Robin Hood being Robin Hood, Maid Marian is Robin Hood. The beginning of the story kicks off because Robin of Locksley, the nobleman that Maid Marian was betrothed to, has died at war, and Maid Marian gets herself in a little situation where she's trying to disguise her identity on some kind of outing, and she wears Robin's green cloak, and people start mistaking her for him, and then she starts getting involved in a lot of like vigilante stuff under that disguise. So one thing that I want to clarify about that, because I feel like it's not exactly clear in the beginning of the book, and I also saw a lot of misunderstanding of it in the Goodreads reviews that I read through, is that Maid Marian is not replacing Robin Hood after Robin Hood dies. Maid Marian is the original and the only Robin Hood in this story. Robin of Locksley, her fiance who dies, was never Robin Hood. He dies before any of this stuff happens. Maid Marian is the one that starts doing the vigilante work, starts meeting the band of merry men and all of that. I just saw a lot of confusion about that on Goodreads, and specifically one review was kind of complaining because Marian is known to be a better archer than Robin was and a better fighter than Robin was. A review was complaining that she was a Mary Sue character because they were like, how could Maid Marian be a better archer than freaking Robin Hood? And I want everyone to know that that's not the case. Maid Marian is not a better archer than Robin Hood. Maid Marian is Robin Hood. But of course, over the time that Marian is dressing up in Robin's cloak in order to do these things, people think that she is Robin of Locksley, the nobleman come back from the dead, so that's why she still ends up being called Robin Hood. And the story basically just kind of follows her rise as this symbol of hope for the people, and her involvement in the vigilante, like stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, and kind of the delicacy of her position trying to maintain that while also maintaining her life as a noblewoman who is actually being pursued by the sheriff's right-hand man. So that is the basic synopsis of this story, and I really loved it, but I will start this review out with some of the negatives because I think that there are some things that would definitely bother some people about this book. I know a lot of people have DNF'd it, and I totally understand that because this book starts off so extremely slow. I mean, you get halfway through the book and it still doesn't really feel like the plot has fully started, and it doesn't really feel like you're getting very invested in the characters and their lives yet, which is kind of like, this is a big book. This is a lot of book to read before things pick up. So that is one complaint that I have. However, I will say that the back end of the book was totally worth it for me, and I'm really glad that I stuck it out. And then the second complaint that I have is kind of the lack of character development and relationship development between like Maid Marian and all her friends and the gang of merry men and everything. There are so many amazing and interesting characters in this story that just, I love them because they subvert all the tropes that you would expect that character to have, but they're just not really given the development and the screen time that I think would have really brought them fully to life. And the same goes for the relationships that are forming in this story. I mean, they're super interesting. You have Maid Marian, all these like outlaw warriors in the forest, and they all become just this team somehow. Those relationships aren't really fleshed out so much on the page, and I wish that they had been. So that is one thing that was slightly, I think, could have been improved in this book for sure. However, despite those flaws, I still loved this book so much. I gave it 5 stars, so like clearly the good things in this book outweighed those things so much for me that I still fell in love with this so hard. The thing that made this book so amazing for me was, like I mentioned about the characters, they kind of subvert all of the expectations and all of the tropes that you expect them to fit into, and that's what this whole story does to everything. To everything that you think you know about the Robin Hood myth, all of the tropes, all of the archetypes at play that are just like mainstay, tried and true. Every Robin Hood story has to have them. This book takes them all and really interrogates them and examines them and calls them out for being like kind of superficial and kind of overly simplistic. And this book delves into what those things actually translate to in real life, in a reality scenario. What do those things mean? You know, it goes into kind of this black and white morality, like, oh, Robin Hood is good and the sheriff's men are evil. But really, is that how the real world works? And Robin Hood is just such a hero. He's so good. Everyone loves him. He does nothing but great things. And this book takes that and says, yeah, okay, sure. Marian is actually working through a lot of grief and a lot of guilt in this book, and those things are really messy and they get sloppy, and Marian isn't a perfect person. And this book just does a really good job of allowing that to be questioned. Also, I'll try to be as vague about this as possible to avoid any spoilers, but the love interest in this story I think was a very daring choice on Meagan Spooner's part, and I think that I really admire her courage in going for that, and I actually think that she pulled it off. Like, I was super happy with it, and I think it was a choice that kept with the rest of the spirit of this book about questioning things and examining these tropes and taking them and allowing them to be something with more depth and more meaning than just like the simplified black and white Robin Hood that we've always known. Like I said, I really liked Meagan Spooner's other retelling, Hunted, which was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and two things that I can say about Meagan Spooner for sure are, first of all, her writing style, her prose. It's just so elegant and beautiful and poetic. It's so fitting for these kinds of like mythical fairy tale stories that she does, and I just love it so much. It transports me right to Sherwood Forest or right to the Beast's castle. Like, she is so talented as a writer. And then the other thing that I can say is that both of her retellings that I've read have just been really unafraid of digging into like the guts and the flesh of these stories and not being afraid to like ruin them, as some people would probably complain. She's not afraid to take them and pick them apart and say, you know what, all of this stuff is really stupid, and let's inject this story with things that actually have like emotion and feeling and meaning behind them. So this kind of retelling I know is probably not for everyone, but for me, I really enjoy it and I really love it. So that is my spoiler-free review on Sherwood by Meagan Spooner. I hope that it was helpful to any of you who are debating whether or not you want to pick up this book. I hope that hearing a little bit about what it's all about and its strengths and weaknesses might help you a little bit in deciding whether or not this is a good match for you and your reading tastes. If you're taking off at this point, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I get to talk to you soon. If you are hanging out for a little bit of a spoiler discussion, then let's go ahead and get on into it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to chat about is like some of my favorite moments, like my favorite little, they're mostly like little one-liners that I just really loved. So there's one where she's talking to Gisborne, who is the sheriff's right-hand man, who's also like kind of pursuing Marian, hoping to marry her. At this point in the book, he's starting to become aware that Maid Marian is like probably hiding something, probably keeping some secret, probably involved in a lot more things that you would suspect like a noble woman of being involved in. And he tells her, you, try as you might to seem so, you are not like other ladies. Absurdly, Marian's mind seized on his last few words, conjuring up images of Elena and Lady Sealed. You don't know ladies, she thought, but managed to bite the words back. I loved this so much. I mean, it's kind of your typical like, not like other girls rebuttal moment, which I just really love, but also I love that this moment also points out how awesome Elena and Lady Sealed are. So Elena is Marian's maid, and Marian her whole life has just like seen her as a maid, like she's just so sweet and innocent and whatever, until she meets up with like the band of merry men and she finds out that Elena is betrothed to Alan. And then on top of that, she finds out that Elena sneaks out at nighttime dressed like a boy to go hang out with the outlaws and like deliver news and stuff to them. So it's just super awesome. Love that for her. Love subverting the expectations of what a quiet, obedient maid is like. And then Lady Sealed or Sealed, I don't know how to say her name, but she's like another noblewoman who Marian has had, you know, like a noblewoman friendship with, right? And she actually ends up in a super hectic situation, like barging into Lady Sealed's room in the middle of the night dressed as Robin Hood. And instead of being like horrified and calling the guards or whatever, Lady Sealed, this married noblewoman, is straight up just like, oh my god, it's Robin Hood. offering him her jewelry to steal and covering for him. And then she also tells him like she reveals her husband's plans of going home early in like a secret carriage so that Robin Hood will ambush his carriage and steal his shit. Like, A+ to Lady Sealed. I just love her so much. This next moment that I really liked is when Maid Marian is talking to her father, and he says, "I can't think where you learned to be so competitive, my dear. You must have learned it from Robin." Marian thinks, no, Robin learned it from me. I really like this moment of her taking that credit for herself, especially kind of having to come to that realization that like when she started out this thing, she thought she was doing it in Robin's name. You know, she was like, this is totally what Robin would have done. And as the story goes on, she starts to realize like, no, maybe this isn't what Robin would have done. Maybe this image I have of Robin in my head is actually an image of myself that I've projected onto him. I'm not doing this for Robin. I think I'm doing this for myself, and this isn't what Robin would have done. This is what I would have done. And I think that like revelation is just so beautiful and so important in this book. And it's one of the things that really, I think, kind of like adds meat to this retelling, and I really like it. The next moment that I absolutely loved is when Marian's father is admitting to her that he knew that her and Robin would sneak out together at night sometimes, and he didn't do anything about it. He was like, whatever, that's fine, I'm gonna let them do what they want. And he says, don't fret, daughter, I had no qualms about letting the two of you be. Marian took a deeper breath, hoping her flush was fading, and said, you knew Robin, you knew he was honorable, you trusted him. And her dad says, no, I trusted you. And oh, that was so powerful to me, like as a girl, like Marian being a teenage girl. Just imagine like that relationship with your father. So many things in our society today are like poisoned by this idea that dads are supposed to, I don't know, shoot people with shotguns and not let anyone near their daughter, and she has to stay in her room until she's 35 and stuff like this. And I love that this book was like, no, this is a good dad. This is a dad that knows he raised his daughter to be smart and to make good decisions, and she has her own agency and she can do what she wants. And even when he starts to suspect that Marian is like involved in this Robin Hood stuff, he doesn't like, he's not happy about it obviously, and he's scared for her, but he doesn't try to chain her and hold her back from doing it. You know, he's like, the protection that I can offer you is, you know, if the sheriff comes asking, I can cover for you or whatever, but my protection doesn't give me the right to force you to stop. And I don't know, I think the recognition of a woman's agency and her right to make her own decisions and lead her own life, even when it's something that he disagrees with or finds dangerous, I think that's really cool to come from a father and a nobleman in this time period, in this kind of story. I think it's really cool. I think the last thing that I kind of want to chit chat about is, of course, the romance. We weren't going to escape a discussion video without talking about the romance. So obviously, in this story, Marian is being pursued by Gisborne, who is like the sheriff's man. He's working with the sheriff, trying to catch Robin Hood and all of this. Robin Hood is like his sworn enemy, and yet he is really trying to marry Maid Marian so that he can inherit like the lands and the title and everything that she has to offer. So obviously, surface level, that is something that is like totally a no-go, right? Like, that is not an empowering story for Marian to end up with this guy who's only after her for her title and who also hates everything that she stands for as Robin Hood. Like, obviously you enter into this interaction being like, ew, Gisborne, no. So I think Meagan Spooner deserves even more credit for making that relationship go from a point A to point B, where, okay, he's not really the person that Maid Marian thought he was. And just like Maid Marian has her own secrets and her motivations, so does he. What I think is so cool about this like revelation is that it doesn't come all at once. It's not like one of those cheesy, aha, everything is revealed and now he's a good guy. It's like truly an over time realization that Maid Marian had been stereotyping him and putting him in a box just because those were her assumptions. And I really love that we had this character of Gisborne able to challenge that and challenge Marian and say, you're not always right. What Robin Hood is doing isn't always right. And just because I'm choosing to do things a different way than you doesn't mean that I don't want the same things as you. And just because our minds are operating differently here doesn't mean that we don't have the same heart. And I love that that was just as much of a realization for Gisborne as it was for Marian, because like she put him in a box, but he had also put her in a box too. Like I said, it was just such a daring choice and such a risky choice on her part to have like Robin Hood and the sheriff's man. That doesn't make any damn sense, but she pulled it off. She made it make sense, and I love that so much. And yeah, I don't know. I really like this book. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I think that's pretty much all I have to say that I can think of right now. So I will go ahead and end this video here, but I would love to chat with you in the comments. If you have read this book, please let me know what you thought of it, or if you have anything that you want to chat about. I am super down to chat about it. And yeah, I hope you liked this video, and I really hope I get to talk to you soon. Bye!